call this special meeting of the Anchorage Assembly to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Boris Dunbar.
Present.
John Weddleton.
Here.
Christopher Constant.
Here.
Fred Dyson. Crystal Kennedy.
Here.
Suzanne LaFrance.
Here.
Cameron Perez-Verdia.
Here.
Pete Peterson.
Present.
Austin Quinn Davidson.
Here.
Felix Rivera.
Present.
Meg Zalatel.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Constant, were you heard in the...
I was.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. There's a flag in the back there. Let's see here. Mr. Peterson, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, there's no place on the agenda for a chair's report, but I'm just going to let you know. Immediately following this special meeting, I intend to call an emergency meeting to consider a resolution prepared by the municipal attorney extending the emergency declaration powers of the mayor. He declared a state of civil emergency this afternoon, and of course the assembly has to be heard from within 48 hours in order for those to continue. Since the governor is not yet presenting, I suggest we continue with this meeting. This is only for introduction, so we actually cannot take any action on these items tonight. So we will call up our consent agenda, I believe, and then we'll have time for audience participation, and then the special meeting will be concluded. Madam Clerk, what are the appropriate motions to get through these three items?
Mr. Chair, I think you can do a motion to introduce. We need a motion, a second, and a third to set for public hearing.
Okay, so we'll do it with all three without a consent agenda.
Yes, we
Okay.
didn't prepare a consent agenda, so yes, I think we need to do each one separately.
Okay. All right, so we're now on item 4A, ordinance number AO 2020-31, ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code 2.30.075 to more broadly define telephonic participation and circumstances wherein members may be telephonic for purposes of establishing a quorum, introduced by myself with public hearing on the 20th of March.
So moved.
Do we have a motion for introduction?
Second. Third.
Okay, so moved by Mr. Constant, seconded by Ms. Quinn Davidson, and thirded by Mr. Weddleton. That's what I heard.
Okay.
Okay? All right, so that has been introduced and set for public hearing on the 20th of March, next week, when I intend to call another special meeting. Thank you. We are now at item 4 Bravo, ordinance number AO 2020-33, an ordinance of the Anchorage Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code Chapter 28.150 regarding the emergency plan for elections to clarify the scope of the municipal clerk's power to preserve the integrity of an election during unforeseeable events affecting the election. Introduced by myself, set for public hearing on March 20th. Do I have a motion to introduce? Moved by Mr. Peterson. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Constant. Third by Ms. LaFrance. All right, we'll now take a brief recess to watch the governor's press conference.
Essentially, last week we had a case of COVID-19 virus. We've had our first case identified today as positive. The doctor will speak in detail about that. But again, this is no surprise. This is nothing extraordinary. What was extraordinary is actually Alaska's run for some time. As you remember, we talked earlier about us setting up our protocol since mid-January. And it was just a matter of time before Alaska, as most of the other states, and there may be 2 states left that have not yet reported a positive, but that probably will change soon as well. And so we feel good about the protocols we have in place. As a result of this positive test, we will reassess our protocols. Any changes to the protocols, the press and Alaskans will be the first to know. But again, this is not a surprise. This is not unusual given what's happening with this pandemic. And so we do have our first case identified of the COVID-19 virus, coronavirus. And well, once again, Dr. Zink will give some detail. We also have with us from Alaska Regional Hospital, the Chief Medical Officer, Carrie Gardner. She too will be up here to be able to speak and answer any questions that you may have. But again, we just continue to work our protocols. We continue to work with the federal government, the CDC, other health professionals in this country, contact with fellow governors and governors associations to see what they're doing in their states. But once again, we're here to announce that we did get our first positive today. It was just a couple hours ago. So that's why we put together the press conference. We want Alaskans to know when something changes in this ever fluid and ever dynamic situation involving this virus. Again, no reason to panic, no reason to get upset. We're going to have more cases as time goes on. And again, I believe that Alaska is equipped, we're geared up to be able to deal with this situation. And we'll take a look at our protocols here this afternoon, this evening. And if there's going to be any changes to any of the protocols, you'll be the first to know, and we'll let you know as soon as possible. So with that, I'd like to give Dr. Zink an opportunity to come up and say a few words, and then Carrie Gardner with Alaska Regional, and then we'll take some questions.
Thank you. So I'm Dr. Ann Zink. I'm the Chief Medical Officer for the state of Alaska. This is a day that we've all been preparing for and hoping that we wouldn't see, but unfortunately we do have our first presumptive positive, as the governor mentioned. We will be sending this lab case down to the CDC for confirmation, which is our normal process. And as we talked about, we would let you know as soon as we possibly could. Our team is actively working on trying to figure out all the details regarding this case, but it's important to share with you about a couple of key details. First of all, this is a foreign national individual who is transiting through Alaska. It was a good reminder on how important the systems work and how important education was. He knew about the virus that causes COVID-19. He was monitoring himself, and as soon as he developed any symptoms that could be potentially consistent with it, this individual protected themselves, called ahead, and was able to be seen and assessed. During that assessment, they went through the process of being assessed for any acute life-threatening medical emergency, was felt to be stable, was tested, the test process went through, and was tested here in the state of Alaska laboratory. When the laboratory test came back positive, it was called to us. We've been working closely with the hospital as well as the patient to make sure that they have been safe. They were given clear instructions to self-isolate, and this patient did self-isolate in an appropriate manner the entire time, has been incredibly kind and cooperative. My heart goes out to this individual as they are suddenly here and getting this news and information far away from loved ones and family, as we're working closely to make sure that they are supported. When I think about this from a medical standpoint and how much I worry about Alaska as a state, and when I think about virus transmission, there's always been kind of two categories in my mind. And one is an individual who's transiting through the state or has known travel history that we can kind of identify who is self-isolated, versus a case of community acquired where we don't know where that person came in and out of, and we don't know about the community spread. This case clearly fits in that first category. This is an isolated case that we think that we can contain, that we can do contact investigation. It does not possess the same threat or risk to Alaska as if this was a community acquired case in a different way. I just cannot thank Alaskans enough for being prepared, for looking at social distancing, for this person being able to protect themselves, and working closely with our hospitals to be able to make sure that we are all standing up together. As the governor mentioned, we've been preparing for this day for a long time. We were hoping we would never see it, but as we are seeing it, we continue to assess the situation and adjust as we need. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Gardner.
Good afternoon and thank you. We at Alaska Regional Hospital have been working closely with both the state and the municipality of Alaska and Anchorage in order to prepare for this day and this moment. We are here today from Alaska Regional just to reassure the public that this was an exposure that took place in a very controlled fashion. So we have been preparing for this day, as both the governor and Dr. Zink have said. And we were prepared for taking care of this individual when he did come to the emergency department. So our staff received kudos for taking full precautions with the patient. donning full protective gear. We do not know of any exposures that took place as a result of this patient arriving to the emergency department. And so we just want to convey the message that we are all working together closely in the city of Anchorage and in the larger public health world of Alaska, and that the emergency departments are safe places for people to come. Then we also want to encourage folks to use the Department of Health 211 system to help determine when it's appropriate to visit the emergency department or to visit their healthcare provider. Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and start with questions here in the room. Joe Vito, KTVA.
Yeah, I was wondering, how did this person get to Alaska? Fly, boat, drive, you know?
Flights, it's patient eating by flights.
Was it a commercial flight or a cargo or something else?
We're working on kind of looking at all those details right now. So as I mentioned previously, we want to get this information out as quickly as possible to you. So I left my EPI team working on all the details while we came to get this information to you all, and we'll go back and we'll continue to update you as we have more information.
Okay. Sticking with the room, Liz?
Yeah, I was wondering about the testing capacity of the state. Is it still at 120 a day, and how many test kits does the state have today?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. It continues to be a flux. There are so many steps in this test process. We've already talked about the sampling process. We've talked about the testing process. There's also a component of the swabs that are needed. So we're really looking through the entire supply chain to make sure all of those things are appropriate and making sure that they're happening. We still have the ability to test around 1,000 people in the state of Alaska. The 120 that had been quoted and mentioned and stuff before, we can change that and up-ramp that. We've changed the ways that we put the numbers on the website, so people may have noticed that. We list how many we've tested at the state, as well as how many are tested at a commercial lab site, because we're using those commercial lab sites to be able to help support what can be done at the state, and we want to make sure all that information is being shared. Those numbers are updated between 12 and 12:30 every single day, 7 days a week. The numbers that came out today, that we had 52 negatives that were tested at the state, 7 negatives that were sent at commercial labs, and we get that information back. This case is not listed on that yet, but tomorrow on the update, we will update it, as we will update all the additional ones. But as I mentioned to you all before, we would get you the information about a presumptive positive prior to being updated on the website, so you would know that the information was out there.
Are there any more possible outstanding cases from the test that we have out right now? Is there anything that you might suspect? Are there any more suspected cases?
I mean, every case is a suspected case. That's why we're testing it. And yes, there are more cases that we're testing. We're testing all day, all night. They're kind of running around the clock. So we continue to monitor this. We really are so grateful for our healthcare providers who are doing a great job in changing their practice and behavior, being able to protect themselves and other. It's interesting as a clinician to completely change the way you have to think about a disease process. I was thinking about this the other day, like what would it feel like to practice medicine and never have known that heart attacks existed? You're having to change your entire process of thinking about a new disease that you've never seen before. And so the clinicians are doing an amazing job thinking about that, putting it in, and we're grateful to see the testing capacity and capability getting up. Part of that's working with them, and I feel like we're able to support them at this time.
Morgan, Anchorage Daily News.
Do you know the route that this individual took transiting here and where we come in contact or contracted the illness?
We don't know all those details as of yet. So again, we look at that 14-day window beforehand. This is an international traveler that was traveling quite a bit internationally prior to coming in here. As I mentioned, our EPI team is doing the investigation right now to try to think about all the different places that this person may or may not have come from. But had just very recently come to Alaska, had very little exposure in Alaska, and had monitored themselves, got tested appropriately, and had been in complete isolation since that time. So this is not someone who's been wandering through the community. This is not someone who's been shopping at the mall. This is not someone who was going out to eat. This was someone who very quickly isolated themselves and attended for themselves.
Okay. Let's go ahead and take a round of questions on the teleconference line. As a friendly reminder, please keep your phone on mute until I call out your name. Let's start in the southeast with Sam of the Ketchikan Daily News. Sam, did you have a question? Okay. Moving on. Becky, Associated Press.
Thank you. Becky Barnes, the Associated Press. Dr. Leek, can you provide any other details about the individual's age at this point? And I also had a question for the governor. We momentary glitch, and I wondered if you could put that statement into context with what we've been seeing transpire since then.
So I'll take the first question and hand it over to the governor. This is an adult who is otherwise healthy and was in transit, was only here briefly, and then moving on. So that's the information I can share about them.
So Becky, if you can repeat the question that was directed at myself, we couldn't really hear you. It's broken up.
Sure, Governor. Earlier this week, on one of the briefings, you had mentioned that that you saw some of these issues as a momentary glitch, and you had described seeing the virus as a momentary glitch. And I wondered if you could put that statement into context with kind of where we are right now with the preparation and just where things stand.
Sure. What I was trying to say, and referring to it as a momentary glitch, is this is not the end of the world. This is a virus. Most of the people that are impacted by the virus, from what we know so far, they get cold and or flu-like symptoms. And some of those folks that fall in a category that we were describing throughout this week, they're over 60, they have underlying conditions. Often that group has more severe symptoms, and it manifests itself.
All right, unless someone is very opposed, I suggest we continue with our meeting. I think we've got the information we were going to get on the positive test. So back into the meeting. We are now at item 4C, ordinance number AO 2020-34, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code Chapter 3.80, civil emergency, to provide specific authority for the mayor to declare a public health emergency and exercise powers relating to the examination, treatment, isolation, and quarantine of persons having or suspected of having a contagious disease, submitted by the Department of Law, set for public hearing on the 20th of March, 2020. Do I have a motion to introduce?
Move to introduce.
Second.
Moved by, who's third? Moved by Mr. Constant, seconded by Ms. Quinn Davidson, and thirded by Mr. Weddleton. Okay, so that concludes our items for this meeting. Okay. Yeah, all of these ordinances will be posted on the Assembly webpage at muni.org. They're on our regular, or on the agenda for the special meeting. We'll have another special meeting on the 20th of March to actually debate and have public hearing. And we'll have a work session on next Wednesday to discuss these items. We'll have 2 work sessions to discuss these items. At this time, we have Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chair, the clerk's office, through our budget analyst, Desiree Camacho, has set up a telephone line for the public to participate in your special meeting on the 20th, and we'll make sure that that's publicized as well.
Great. So we'll have a ability to participate telephonically. I should also note that the next special meeting next week will be at the Lusac Library in our regular chambers. So at this time, we have time for audience participation. Would anyone like to participate? All right, you'll have 3 minutes. Please identify yourself for the record.
Sure. I'm Ron Oliva. I'm adjacent to Brother Francis Shelter Beans Cafe. I've signed a letter of intent with the city to sell my parcels as a use for the homeless or whatever they need. But I'd like to say that also the disinfectant that I've asked for in the past, the plan has never been activated. And now more than ever, with that vulnerable population, I want to make sure that they're safe and secure. And I will offer my facility now, whether I rent it, lease it, or do something to execute the offer to purchase. I think that site is the most amenable and compatible if isolation is needed within the foreseeable future. So I really want to be a contributor, someone who will be helpful. If something breaks out, I subscribe to the Seattle Times. They've already purchased another property. Their first tenant was a homeless person, and if it does get into that population, whether it be Seattle, Portland, Los Angeles, they're all addressing it, that it will spread the fastest of any population because of their lack of a concern for their own health. So I think it's real important that you activate the disinfection plan, the prevention plan, and if we're going to suppress the curve, I think that's a real nucleus to start. And again, I want to say on a moment's notice, we'll mobilize, get off the lot, accommodate, fire prevention, anything to make it safe and secure to contain this as much as we can with that vulnerable population. So if you have any questions, we're ready to mobilize, get off, and make that available to the municipality for their emergency services. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Leland. I don't see any questions. Would anyone else like to participate from the audience, members of the public? Yes. Please identify yourself for the record.
My name is Eugene Carhaven. I'm an Alaska resident for over 42 years. Resident in Anchorage for approximately 20 years and currently resident in Valley. This meeting was scheduled when? Yesterday for today. This is some serious information that you are looking at, and then you're holding a meeting where for this, where there could have been a video audio over in Lusac, you have in the small room, bring us all close together with this World Health emergency. It would have been more safer with respect to have it there, but you keep on having these rooms. Now, I'm also noticed, this is news to me, and you know I keep close. We've got another meeting at 6 o'clock dealing with the emergency declaration, dealing with the mayor, that you're going to decide tonight. There's no place for public comment, and I've yet to see a copy of this in this room or at the press conference, which I was at 2:30. Keeping the public isolated, quarantined from ability to discuss this and throw this kind of scenario in, and I've said over the years, over this situation is, you continue to have both administration and assembly, a situation long before this emergency, allowing yourselves coming to public meetings sick. Indifference. I witnessed Supreme Court justices come to public meetings sick. I witnessed members of the press coming to the joint meeting of the school board last Friday sick, and they admitted it to me. So now you're going to throw this kind of language fast for the people not to be able to comprehend, and I fear for this scenario. I'm concerned about the health emergency, yes, but the fact is, you don't do it this way, because the way you're doing it right now is more likely is not going to be understood by the public. It's not going to be supported by the public because you're throwing it through so fast and written in so fast, and the end result is it's going to damage the situation for the public, which you need, the public support in this situation worldwide. You're dividing the public, and you're not having the conversation with the public before you make decisions. And I'll note this in closing. You've been doing that for years, and now you're in an emergency. What makes this any different? It's business as usual. And how can you allow this? And the public is basically accepting this because you don't care about that engagement, that conversation with them. And the end result is state law requires reasonable opportunity the public be heard. That 6 o'clock meeting, which is news to me, there's no place on the agenda.
Thank you, sir. Your time has expired. All right. So, would anyone else in the public like to be heard? All right. We'll move on now to assembly comments. We'll start with you, Ms. Quinn Davidson.
None for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. LaFrance.
No comments. Thanks.
Mr. Rivera.
No comments.
Mr. Constant.
No, thank you.
Mr. Weddleton.
Well, these are odd times with this virus, and sometimes you have to act fast, and we have followed the procedures that we have in front of us. I hope the public will take a look at these ordinances. We have a week, so 7 days, for everybody to look at them and respond to them. But we've got a lot happening in a hurry here that's out of our control, and we've got to take our role as leaders to deal with it.
That actually raises a question. Mr.
Mr. Costa.
So the notice requirement is 7 days. 7 days from introduction or 7 days from publishing on the website?
Madam Clerk, could you speak that? It's why we did it on Friday instead of Thursday.
I see. Okay, so it's actually 8 days. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
It's 7, but it's the way you count.
Right.
Okay.
It's a full 7 days.
Ms. Zalatel, do you have any comments?
No comment, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zalatel. Mr. Perez-Verdia, do you have any comments? Okay. I have no comments except to say thank you to my colleagues for coming to this meeting. Immediately following the special meeting, we're going to have an emergency meeting, which does not require public notice, where we will consider a resolution regarding the emergency powers of the mayor that's been requested by the administration. So with that, I'm going to close this special meeting.